Hello everybody, how's it going? I hope you're all having a lovely evening. So today I wanted to discuss a topic that I've discussed in a really old video. I don't read the comments on every video anymore because I get about 18,000 a day now. But I used to read the comments on all my videos, used to pride myself on it and respond to a lot of them. And this was one that I found interesting. Almost as interesting as the mating call of whatever is in this tree. By the way, everybody, we are in beautiful Jacksonville, Florida this evening. I'm going out to do this video now and walk around a little bit because during the daytime here, the sun is so hot that my phone, I actually couldn't record with it because the phone got so hot that it turned off. And it's also excruciatingly hot during the daytime here. So, what I wanted to discuss today was job interviews. I have a really peculiar way of doing job interviews, and it stems from my experience when I used to apply for jobs and fail to get them. What I experienced when I would apply for jobs is very strange. The job interview process was really uncomfortable for me. I would be asked a bunch of questions that seemingly had nothing to do with the job that I was applying for. I would be asked questions on stuff like what my goals were in 5 or 10 years, what made you passionate about this job, what made you apply to this company instead of the others, name 5 pros and cons about yourself or flaws and strengths. I'm passionate about being able to pay my rent. I'm probably not supposed to tell you this, but I applied to other jobs but yours so that if I don't get hired by you, I get hired by somebody else. And in 5 years, hopefully whatever I'm doing makes me more money than this job that I'm applying with for you right now. I don't really know how to answer that stuff. And even if you try to, do your best job to give the answers that are genuinely honest in a tactful way or say what you think the other person wants to hear, it's an awkward and weird experience. So I always used to say that when I become an adult, that what I'm going to do is I'm going to give a different type of job interview. If I ever become a boss someday, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give a job interview where the way that we figure out who gets the job, we're going to do it based on something like you just do the job. So for instance, if I'm hiring someone as a board repair tech, rather than ask them 30 or 40 different weird questions, I'll put them in front of my desk in front of a board from some recycled computer, and I'll ask them, you think you can fix this? And then I'll leave for a half hour and I'll come back and I'll see where they went. Look at that, they're flying. Now, maybe they fix it. And if they do, well, they got a job. Maybe they don't fix it, but they're able to tell me why that board is not an economically viable repair. And they explained to me what their thought process was, and they showed me the jumpers they ran and the chips they replaced, and I could see the quality of their soldering, and I go, you know what? You didn't fix this board, but it wasn't a fixable board, and you told me why. You have a job. Or maybe they tried to fix it and failed, and they got everything wrong. Their soldering is bad, their thought process makes no sense, they missed things that were obvious, and they don't get the job. What I like about this method is that it takes away the subjectivity of how I perceive your answers to the questions, or the attitude you have when you're answering the questions, or the way you look, or the way you talk, or the way we personally get along, or whether or not I identify with you as a person. All that kind of stuff goes away. Well, let's say it's a customer service job. Instead of asking you 30 different questions, looking through your resume, asking about your experience at these different jobs, I'll ask Kevin to bring up a ticket that sucks. Something where we have to give some really bad, awkward news that's going to suck. It's just bad. Everybody's avoiding this phone call, and they're avoiding it for good reasons. And I'll ask him to bring up that phone call, and I'll have him bring up that ticket. And maybe you have to check out that ticket. Maybe you're the one who makes that phone call. And we see how you make the call. Now, you can't guarantee the customer's going to be happy, but if they try to trip you up, how do you handle it? If they're unhappy for a good reason, how do you approach the situation with them so that they're less likely to respond in a horrible way? And even if they don't respond well, how do you handle it? Like, do you get steamrolled? Do you work with them? Do you empathize? Do you figure out a way to deliver the news in a way where it's not going to elicit the worst possible reaction? If you get a bad reaction, how do you cope with it? I want to see all this stuff. And, some of this stuff, it's not always going to be a perfect method, but I find that it works. What I want to do is I want to see how you handle the actual situation that we're hiring you for. I don't care about your criminal record. I don't care about which school you graduated from and what your GPA was on your resume. I don't care about where you see yourself in 5 or 10 or 20 years, because I'm trying to hire you for right now. And let's face it, admittedly, lots of people are just not going to be honest when they ask you that question. Or when they answer that question. I want to know if you're able to do the job I'm asking you to do. I don't want to know your self-perceived list of flaws and pros and all this stuff. It's awkward. So I just ask him to do the job. And if you're able to do the job, well, it doesn't really matter what your ability is to answer a bunch of silly questions from me. I get taken out of the equation. I no longer matter. How we get on one-on-one as human beings talking to one another no longer matters. And it shouldn't. My job is to provide work for you to do, and your job is to make those customers from the work that I bring in happy. Your job is not to make me happy. It's to make my customers happy. This has always been a method that's worked for me, because it kind of removes me from the equation. I've seen lectures online about how people will personalize certain applicants, or get along with them as a human being, and then as a result of getting along with them as a human being, they'll hire someone who they probably shouldn't. And I'll admit, I'm kind of a novice when it comes to being a business owner or a manager. I don't really know how to tell if someone is going to be good at their job from asking them questions. I don't. It's kind of like, ask someone, 20 questions and figure out if they'd be a good relationship partner. It's like, you can get a mild idea, but you never know. Now, someone had brought up in my comments in the video that this is an exploitative method of employing people, because the person is going to be doing some work, and they're going to do that job, but they're going to do that job and they are not going to be compensated for it because they're not on the books at the point of time that they're doing the interview. And if there's 5 applicants and that applicant doesn't get hired, even if they did something that could be construed as work, they're not getting paid for it, and that's wrong. I never thought about it from that angle before, to be honest with you. And the reason I'm doing this video is because I haven't been an employee for so long. Last time I was an employee of a business was late teenage years, that I think I'm very far detached from the perspective of people who are employees. So it's easy for me to have a blind spot and kind of do things that maybe are not very fair. So I'm kind of curious how other people see this. Do you see it as exploitative to have a job interview process where the way that the interview takes place, it's not through looking at resumes, looking through, calling references, doing criminal background checks, asking questions about the applicant, and rather is, okay, so we're hiring you to make pizzas, so I want to see how you make this pizza. Let's see how you make it. And then you taste the pizza at the end, and it's like, oh, this is the best pizza I've ever had. You're hired. Or this tastes like a tire. Go away. Kind of thing. What do you think of this as a method? Also, the questions that I have for you in the audience are, when it comes to this, is what job interviews have you had that went really well and went really poorly? Why did it go really well or really poorly, outside of just you getting the job? And what do you think would be the ideal method of conducting a job interview? What do you think is the best way to do it? Now, my method is a method that obviously is not going to work on everything. You can't like hire a heart surgeon and say, okay, let's see you perform heart surgery on this patient. I want to see if you do it or screw it up. Like, there's a lot of jobs where this doesn't work. And also, my method is also a method that really works on things where the job itself is dealing with a specific task that does not take a long amount of time over and over again, rather than a large job. So in my industry, this conversation with a customer, this repair, you're iterating the same thing, tens of thousands of millions of times, but each one of those things is not something that takes a giant amount of time. If we're talking about a job where the work that you do is going to be, something that takes like 6 weeks, 8 months, 5 years, then obviously this is a method that's not going to work. But I'm curious what people think of this method. Do you think it's exploitative, or is it something that you would have actually preferred to a traditional job interview? How do you feel about traditional job interviews? And what do you think would be the ideal way for an employer to gauge whether or not someone was fit to work at a company that's fair, it's equitable, that removes the employer from the decision-making process or any sort of social biases they may have from the decision-making process? Now, something that I'm going to have to start doing at some point is I'm going to have to start hiring people that know how to do things I don't know how to do. And I don't know if I'm ready for that because I've never had to do that before. And I don't know if I have that skill as a business owner with some of the new organizations I've started. So one thing that's made it easy for me is for every job that I hire for right now, all of them, these are jobs where I know how to do the job, and I have done it, and I know this, and I also know what is possible and what isn't. So when it comes to a board repair, I know when something is a little too difficult and impossible versus this is something I can expect you to do, because as someone who's not IPC certified, who didn't really have a proper education on any of this, I know what I can do. Or when it comes to customer service, I know what someone who's very socially awkward is capable of, as me, so I kind of know what to expect from people. But also, I've done all these jobs. So the jobs that everybody does at the store, besides the hard drive data recovery, from doing platter swaps and all that kind of stuff, and dealing with platter damaged drives and trying to get data off of them. Besides that, I know how to do all the jobs that everybody at the store does. I've done shipping before, so I've done the shipping department, so I know, okay, you should be able to test, clean, and box and ship this number of machines in this time period. I know how many fresh desk tickets I should be able to expect that you respond to in this time period because I see how I respond to them. I know how, if you have an angry customer or one angry customer, I kind of have an idea of how patient I can expect you to be because I know how much patience I have as someone who is very socially awkward and really just doesn't get along with people. With board repair, again, I do board repair, so I have an idea. I know how to do all these jobs, so I can tell if someone is being real with me when they're saying that your expectations of me are unrealistic or when they're totally full of shit or not up to the job. Because if I can do it as an uneducated moron, then I think it is fair that I have the expectation that an employee do it. I don't ask of people who work for me things that I would not ask of myself. Whether it's the ability to do a MacBook Air LCD cell screen only repair back in 2012 and 11 when nobody else knew how to do that. Figuring that stuff out or doing board repair, all this stuff, all the things that my employees do, even though I don't do them right now, at some point in time I did them, and I was doing them at the production and level where, I had to get it done in this amount of time so that the customers didn't kill me and so that I could keep good reviews online. So any job that I do right now where I'm hiring people for it, it's a job that I've at some point done and know how to do. But when it comes to jobs I don't know how to do, that's where it's going to start to become really difficult. It's difficult to gauge whether or not someone knows what they're talking about when you're hiring someone to do a job that you don't know how to do, where the reason you're hiring them is because you have no idea how to do it. You need someone that knows how to do this, but you haven't the first clue about it. So when you interview them, well, you can't really know if they know what they're talking about because you don't really know what you're talking about with that job. You can't really know if they're doing it right because you don't know if you're doing it right. I remember this happened when I first got that BGA machine and I really didn't know how to do large tip BGA rework. Had a gentleman, very nice guy. He'd take 9 hours to do a single job. And he would explain the profile and setting the profile and all the things he had to do and why this was necessary, that it'd take 6 to 9 hours to replace a single graphics card on a single 820-2915. And then one night, my friend and I came by. We're actually a little drunk at the end of a long, fun evening. We went to some party, which I virtually never, ever do. And we wanted to figure out how to use the machine. So we swapped the GPU on some refurb board I had sitting around, and it took 1 hour and 17 minutes. And he looked at me and said, "You and I have never used this machine in our lives, and we just did a successful job while drunk in 1 hour and 17 minutes. Can you explain to me why you are putting up with someone who you said the other day was telling you why it takes 9 hours to do a single job? Like, why?" And he was pushing me to let this person go, and I was saying, I'll give him some more time, give him a chance, give him more time. And eventually I wound up just letting him go. And he said, why didn't you let me go sooner? You should have let me go sooner. And I said, well, you kept telling me what you were going to do to make this faster, and I don't know how to do your job, so I believed you. But then once I actually tried to do your job myself, that was when I realized that you were fibbing with me this whole time. Maybe not fibbing, maybe he believed it's supposed to take that long because he didn't know how to do it in less time because he didn't know how to do the job. Maybe he really thought he knew it. Now this whole idea, this Dunning-Kruger thing where people who don't know how to do something, they're not lying to you. They genuinely believe their own overconfidence when they tell you that they're qualified to do something that they don't know how to do. Maybe that's what it was, I don't know. But it's very aggravating to try to hire people to do jobs that you don't know how to do, or at least that I don't know how to do, because it's difficult for me to figure out which one of you knows what you're talking about. It's easy in my own industry for me to be able to figure out who knows what they're talking about, especially if I know how to do what you do. If I know how to respond to specific fresh desk tickets or what to say so that person, what's the right thing to say, knowing this person has contacted 5 repair shops so that they bring it here and delete the emails they got from the other 4, I can judge that. But I can't really judge jobs that I don't know how to do. It's hard. It's a very peaceful looking thing back there. I don't know what it is, but it's peaceful. But you can't see that because it's really dark, unfortunately. There's someone yelling out of their truck in a Ford F-150 over there at me. I imagine I'm going to see a lot more of that happen in Florida. Florida's an interesting place, man. I can't wait to get to the rest of it. So I'm kind of curious what you would all advise in terms of when you have to hire people to do jobs that you don't know how to do yourself. For the business owners out there that are more successful than me, more experienced than me, and more knowledgeable than me, what do you suggest? What helps? Because there's a lot of stuff that I want to start doing. And there's a lot of things that I'd like to start doing that are going to require people that know how to do things that I don't know how to do. And I'm going to have to figure out how to tell which ones actually know how to do it and which ones are just claiming they know how to do it because they need a job. You know, I mean, there's nothing, I'm not going to judge them. When I was 17, 18 years old and I wanted Adam Odell Sporting Goods, I just went through the jobs list and it's like, assistant chef? Sure. Assistant inventory manager? Why not? Junior level construction? I'll give it a shot. Let's see. They're stupid enough to hire and pay me. I'll show up and be stupid enough to try and learn on the job. I understand it. I've had people that show up that completely lie about their qualifications 100% because they're hoping and praying that maybe they'll figure it out as they go because they need the money. And I've been there. I've been the person that I wanted to have enough money that I could move out. Some crappy apartment with some roommates enough that I've showed up to jobs that I wasn't qualified for, and they figured it out pretty quickly. But how do you tell if someone knows or is good at a particular position? If this is a position where you're not going to be able to tell immediately, you're not going to be able to tell in a 20-minute session, you're not going to be able to get them to demonstrate that they're an expert at it in a 20-minute session. Now, this is a book by Dale Doughton that I liked, that I read a long time ago, called The Gifted Boss. And that book encouraged me to continue with my strategy, which is I befriend people that worked at other repair shops, and once I needed somebody, I would think about the people that worked at another repair shop that were really good at their job, that were underpaid. I would go to them and say, hey, how do you feel about getting an additional week of paid vacation a year and a 45% pay raise? And they go, really? Wow, that's great. Where? Working here. And because I already knew them, and because it wasn't a job interview process, that was the process where I got to know them, I knew them on an honest level. I knew what they were capable of. They weren't bullshitting me because it wasn't like they were trying to get a job from me. And one of those people is one of those people is actually the manager right now. I took him from a place that I worked at and quit 13 years ago. He got fired from because the place's manager is a fucking idiot. And now we have more 5-star reviews than they do. So and in that book, he says that the entire process of job, like once you go to job interviews, Dale Doughton's idea is that's the worst possible way, because you're going to get people that are pretty much the people that nobody else wanted. And I hate to put it that way. It's a disgusting way to put it. It sounds like I'm putting people down on them. I don't intend to do that. It's Dale Doughton's words, not mine. But it's essentially the people that are good never get to the point of applying for jobs. The people that are good, the moment that they're somewhat unhappy, the people that are in their network around them are like, oh, you're unhappy where you work right now? Okay, cool. Come work here. Here, I'll give you a 10% pay raise. Come work here. And the people that make it to the point of applying for jobs are the people that essentially there's nobody around them that they know. There's nobody in their network that's saying that. And I think that that may have been true for some economic boom times. But I think after COVID, where you have hundreds of thousands of businesses that have been shut down and destroyed, that the math there may be a little bit different. That after having all these businesses go out of business and get destroyed, that the math may be, to the point where there's some really, really talented people out there that are really good at what they do, that because the government said, flip the switch on your business, are not making a salary right now. And those businesses, here's the thing about business and the way things work, it's kind of like there's a momentum element to it. You could flip the switch off. It's kind of hard to turn the switch back on. You can't flip the switch back on later. I think that's something that Cuomo and de Blasio are going to figure out soon, but we'll see. So I would appreciate your input on these two matters. Behind door number one, when going for a job interview, which approach do you prefer? Do you prefer the approach of, the resume, the references, the background check, and then getting asked a bunch of questions? Or would you really rather just show up at a place, be demoed, where you do the job, and after 20 minutes they say, okay, looks like you're able to do what we're asking you to do, so we're hiring you. Which approach do you prefer? Which job interview methods have worked for you or not worked for you? And also, I'm kind of curious, what advice would you have for trying to hire people to do work that you have no idea how to do, where it's kind of hard for you to tell if someone's BSing you or not? Anyway, let me know what you think. That's it for today. And hopefully I learned something. Because sometimes this is a two-way street. It's not just you learning things from me or learning how to do a board repair or something like that. I'd like to learn from all of you. See you later.